welcome along to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed Knight.
I'm Andrew Nicol.
And today on the show, we are comparing OneRoof versus Homes.co.nz versus QV versus Trade Me. Now, you would not believe it, Andrew, but this is a question that people text into the show all the time.
Really?
All the time.
I thought actually you'd come up with this. I was pretty impressed.
No. We get so many questions. It happens almost every webinar. And in the past, I've kind of shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't know.
Compare them.
Well, you know, what do I know?
Ed.
I'm just an economist, humble economist. And so what we've done, not a humble person, but okay. And what we have done today is we've actually got quite a bit of a process where we've done a bit of a comparison, which I'll take you through. But before we get into it, Andrew, what is your, I know I said your name really weird. Andrew, which is your favourite when you are trying to value a property? Because that's what we're talking about. You put a property in and you get a number out that says ballpark, what's it worth? Which one's your favourite?
Well, so there's the two that I use most often. If I'm working with investors and I'm looking at their portfolio and they say, I don't know what that property is worth, I would use QV and Velocity for the I valuation. And to be fair, I think Velocity, I probably find their comparison tool or I valuation tool maybe a little bit generous at times. QV is probably the one that I've used for the longest.
So the interesting thing there, though, is that Velocity isn't available to the general public.
Oh, isn't it?
No, you got to pay like $50 a valuation, don't you?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, well, that and QV, you pay for the valuation on that as well.
Well, if you go onto QV's website, you can actually get a ballpark value for free.
Okay, well, when I do the evaluations to get probably a more accurate one, I presume, I use both the QV and the I valuation.
Oh, so high roller Andrew Nicol, willing to pay for his valuations.
I have a business credit card.
Well, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go just through the free ones. So OneRoof, Homes.co.nz, QV, Trade Me. And the interesting thing is, in the past, I've always said, well, I quite like OneRoof just because it's got a little circle that says whether they think they've got high confidence in it, low confidence, or medium confidence. So I kind of liked that. But what we've done in order to compare these four websites is I've gone on to interest.co.nz, and you guys who are watching on YouTube, you guys can see this, and anybody listening to the audio version, still listen along, but if you want to see what's on my screen, you can find that on YouTube. We'll link to it down.
This was a great idea, by the way, of how to work out which is better.
Okay, so let me just explain that because I've already told Andrew about it before we hit record. I went on to interest.co.nz and I found all of the auction details. Now, the great thing is, or the hard thing that we've got to get around, is we've got to find out what a property was worth or what a property actually sold for.
Which is the true worth.
Yeah, the true value compared to what these websites said it was worth before that. So the reason I'm using auction sales is that I can go on and I can see what something actually sold for the weekend before or the week before we're recording this show. And then I was able to say, well, what did the OneRoof say? What did Homes.co.nz say? What did all of these websites say that these properties were worth?
And that's because they don't have the data loaded in now, so we're still working on what their estimate is rather than the true value, which only happened no business hours beforehand.
That's right, because we're looking at Friday, we're recording this on a Monday, and so the sales won't be notified through council or wherever the different companies get their data from. So that's what we're banking on. So I've taken all of these figures and I've just run 15 properties through it. So I've
taken just 15. You had the whole weekend.
Well, it still took about an hour and a half to get the actual data. And so I've got it here for you guys. And so what you can see here is there's 15 different sales, and I've got the auction sales price, and then I've got the valuation for each of these. Now,
are they all over the country?
No, I've only chosen Auckland in this instance because that's where there are a lot of auctions.
Yes.
But you could do this for your area, and I'm going to talk soon about how accurate homes.co.nz is around the country.
If you too don't have friends to hang out with at the weekend, then you could do this yourself.
No. I've got a special link for you, but I will tell you at the end. That's just me baiting you to listen to the whole show. But what I really want to show you is this part here, and I'll make this a bit bigger because what I'm showing you here, Andrew, is how accurate or how far off as a percentage OneRoof, Homes, Trade Me and QV were from what it actually sold for. So let me take this first one over here. 1B Wakeling Ave in Te Atatu South So actually sold for 1.255 mil. So 1.2 mil plus 55,000, and OneRoof, Homes, and QV, they were all saying that property is worth somewhere between 1.3 and 1.46 mil.
Not 1.26?
Yeah, that's Trade Me. And so over here, I've got, well, how far off were they?
What you're saying is QV valued at 16.8% over. Is that right?
Yeah. So you can see that in some instances, hey, all of them were valuing, in this case, it was Portesia Place. They thought that it was valued 20% more than what it actually sold for. So it sold for like 20% less than what all of these websites showed you. But what's interesting is that there are some properties that are selling for way over, and some are selling for way less. And there's very few in the middle. But what I want to show you guys is that when I took the...
Wow, someone got it bang on, 0.0.
Yeah, that was 32 Wynyard Road in Mount Eden, and QV got that one bang on. It was the only one that was 100% there. Now, what's interesting that I want to show you is that obviously some properties they're 20% out by.
Why would you guess that was?
Well, it could be anything to do with the property, if they've done it up a lot, if it's, in an area where there aren't a lot of equivalent sales.
Well, that's over, so probably if they've done it over a lot, it wouldn't be that. But maybe it's in a decrepit state, or maybe there was a desperate sale, and so someone took a lower price.
Yeah, it could be anything like that. Now, what's interesting...
Could be a murder home.
Now, when you average it out, it appears as if they're all very accurate. Now, I'm going to come back to this because when you average out the 15 sales that I've said, what's the average of those 15 sales?
Who got it the most accurate?
OneRoof.
Oh, that circle's paying off for them.
Followed by QV.
But see, the interesting thing about that, though, OneRoof has got quite a lot more extremes by the look of it, whereas QV is a lot more within QE. And yes, it's got some extremes, but most of them are pretty close.
That's actually something I wanted to pull up. So let me just give you a really easy example for this. Let's say we only looked at 2 properties, right? Yep. And let's say OneRoof for one of those properties was 20% over and the other was 20% under.
Yep.
Now, the average is that, hey, they were bang on 0%.
Yeah.
But actually, they were 20% wrong both times.
Yes.
Now, that's essentially what you're seeing here with OneRoof. So OneRoof was either way over or way under most of the time. Average it out, and it looks like they're bang on. Now, with QV, they've got fewer of those extremes and more that are pretty, what we would say, correct. So with OneRoof, the extremes are making it look like they were really accurate, but actually they weren't in that case because the average looks good, but they had too many on the extremes that are balancing each other out, whereas QV appears to be a bit more accurate just from this tiny sample that we've taken.
I wonder if these websites take their wins and their losses and adjust their algorithm.
Oh, well, I actually will come to that when it comes to homes in a second. Now, what I've got here is I've tried to adjust for that issue that we've just talked about. And so what you can see if you're watching on YouTube is I've given it a sensitivity factor. So show me all of the sales where they were more than 5% out.
And is that, so I'm pretty sure a registered valuer is allowed to be plus or minus 5% off the top of my head.
Okay, that's interesting.
So that's a pretty good choice of number.
I'm going to claim that I did that on purpose. So essentially what I'm saying here is show me all of the sales where they were 6% or more out. Because I thought, you can be plus or minus 5%. Yes. So then we can use this as a guide to try and adjust for that problem where some are like just way out.
So interesting that Trade Me appears to be the worst, is it? Or no?
So Trade Me and OneRoof both had 11 out of 15 sales where they were more than 5% out, where the valuation that they said, this is what we think the property's worth, is more than 5% away from what the property actually sold for.
Now, I don't know if this is correct, so Trade Me's lawyers, please don't send me a cease and desist letter. I'm just saying, I wonder if this is the case. I wonder if Trade Me, which advertises properties for sale through real estate agents, if real estate agents go in there and suggest what a property price might sell for and have high expectations, and then if that affects their algorithm when they're estimating.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know about Trade Me, but there was an issue last year with homes.co.nz. Yes. Now, I'll tell you a little story just briefly because we've got time for it, where I actually got a message over the weekend where somebody said, oh, the real estate agent is trying to tell me that I need to take less for my property. And I've just gone on homes.co.nz and the valuation has gone down by 200K. Do the real estate agents have control over this? And I said, well, I don't actually know whether homes.co.nz has changed this or not. But there was an article early last year, 2021, where it was the other way around, real estate agents trying to get buyers to push the price up. So they went in and adjusted it.
Yeah, that was absolutely happening.
So that's interesting. Now, just coming back to this. So when I count the number of properties, just from this tiny sample of 15, where the websites were 5% or more out, QV again comes back as quote unquote most accurate, followed by Homes.
Economist says QV most accurate.
Well, that's what I'm trying to guard
now
against.
Being sued by Homes, Trade Me and OneRoof combined.
You see, the trouble is because there are so many wonderful people, like everybody listening to the show, because people listen to it, sometimes when we say something, people say, no, that's not correct. I've got the data, Sue. I can show you that it's the case. But Trade Me and OneRoof were, for this small sample, were the furthest out. Now, let me ask you this. Does this change what you were thinking about any of these websites? Are you gonna swear off Homes and OneRoof?
No, I think that look. So someone actually rang me over the weekend. This is a good friend of mine, and he probably might be listening to the show. Nick, it's you. And he rang up and said, "Hey, look, I'm buying this section." Trying to get a guide as to price. Now, this section is for him to buy. There's another section which is comparable above it, which is $200,000 less. And he said, am I overspending by $200,000? Now, in that case, there was no caveats on that land, which allowed him to build what he wanted compared to the one above. So that's obviously, that has a value to it. But the other part to it is, something's only worth something when someone's willing to pay for it. So you can take all the algorithms in the world, but all it takes is one person to pay a price, and that becomes the value.
Oh, was that he's comparing the online?
He was talking about the actuals. But in some instances, people kind of go to these and then they hang their hat on it. I'm not paying that because Home says it's not worth that. Well, it doesn't matter what Home say. If you're going to miss out on the property that's going to be the house of your dreams, then you're the silly person for not paying the extra $10,000 just because Home says it doesn't make that true. And if someone else is willing to pay the extra $10,000, then it is worth that.
Well, here's the thing. This little analysis is so small that it only gives you a taste. I'm not saying that QV is more accurate. I'm saying of a small sample of 15 properties, just to get a sense of this, which one for these 15 came out as most accurate, and QV did.
Why don't you just take next weekend and do the whole do the
entire country? Yeah. Any volunteers who want to sit with me at the office? But what I do want to show you, which is accurate, is homes.co.nz does release data from the last 3 months where they compare the valuation they had or the number they had with what actually sold. And then they've got what's called the median error. So for Christchurch, on average, they were 10% out.
Is that positive 10 or negative
either way?
10? Or,
either way. So on average, because median is an average, they were out by 10%. If you look at the homes.co.nz estimate and it says 700,000, well, just bear in mind that on average, it's going to be 10% above or below that. Now, for Tauranga City, it's 7%. If you look at some much smaller areas like grey districts, just because there's so many fewer properties and the properties are cheaper, so 10% is obviously quite small in an area like grey district, they're 27% out or 28% out.
I think it's great
on average
that a company actually puts this data out. Hey, look, this is what it was in terms of accuracy or inaccuracy, because they're not claiming to be able to predict the future, but actually pointing out that, hey, this is the margin of error. I think it's really. So
I think that when you're on here, and I'll drop a link in the show notes where you'll be able to find this, but the reason I really like this is that on average, and I think I did build a spreadsheet of this. Let me just pull it up.
This is all because I had to cancel on Saturday night for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, you didn't want to have our date. So look, I'm doing the median of the median, but the median council area, homes.co.nz was out by 9.5%. So plus or minus 10% when you look at a homes.co.nz. But you can't just do that, because I'll show you something else that's interesting. Another thing they publish is, well, how many of the properties were within plus or minus 10%? So for Christchurch, only half of the properties that sold over the last 3 months, homes.co.nz was within plus or minus 10%.
Really
now, that means that half the properties were obviously outside of that range.
And actually only 74% were within 20%.
Yeah, and when you're talking about, let's call it a $700,000 property, that means that only 3/4 of properties were within plus or minus $140,000.
Yeah.
So that's why you can't just look at a homes.co.nz and be like, well, that's what it is, I'm not paying any more.
Yeah.
Plus or minus 20%. And in fact, let's just look for the one that had the highest accuracy rate, Timaru. That's interesting. That seems like that's probably going to be a bit of an anomaly, but let's go with it anyway. So even in the district where they were most accurate over the last 3 months, there was still 3% of properties, 4% of properties that fell outside of that. So, except for Nelson, where they were 100% and within plus or minus 20%. Might cut that out just because it doesn't prove my point. No, we're not going to do that. But I think the key thing here that I'm trying to show is that if I was looking at homes.co.nz, because that seems to be the most popular, just remember that only half the properties, ballpark, maybe 60% of the properties are going to sell within plus or minus 10%. 4 out of 10 properties, or 2 out of 5 properties, are going to sell for prices outside of that.
Look, and I actually, just to add to that, I think that you cannot rely on anything online to get a proper gauge of what a value is. It's a good tool to kind of give you a finger in the ear, but you really need to do a site visit yourself. And you don't know the market, get a registered valuer, talk to real estate agents, talk to someone who knows what they're doing.
So a couple of next steps for you. First of all, if you're listening to the audio version, then you might like to check out this on YouTube as well. I'll drop a link to that down in the show notes. And then what we'll also do is drop a link in the show notes for the homes estimate, so where they're above or below, because that'll also allow you to say, hey, look, for my area, whether you're in Selwyn District, Palmerston North or Taupo, how accurate have they been in the past? Because I think it will surprise you how low some of these numbers are. The other thing that I want to let you know about is that we're doing our next webinar. And
Tomorrow.
It's not tomorrow.
That's what it says there.
No, it says talk about webinar. And so I'm going to do that now. Our next webinar is how to avoid the 8 things that go wrong in property investment. So recently we talked about the 8 things that can go wrong. We're really going to talk in this webinar about, well, how do you avoid them? We're going to give you our playbooks for how we avoid the things that go wrong, because some people after listening to that episode were saying, well, so many things could go wrong. I better not buy. Yeah, look, there are things that do go wrong in property investment. The key thing is, what are you going to do about it? Because you don't want to be so scared that your fear is going to hold you back. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pump you up with a whole heap of strategies that you can use to avoid those problems. And to do that, I want you to come along to the webinar. So tap or swipe over the cover art. I'm going to drop a link into the show notes, or go to opespartners.co.nz. You'll be able to sign up there. Tuesday the 5th, I think it is. Yeah, Tuesday the 5th of April, 7 p.m. Thanks for listening to the Property Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ed McKnight.
And I'm Andrew Nicholl.
And we're going to be back again tomorrow with even more daily strategies, tactics, and insights to help you get the most out of the New Zealand property market. Until next time.